The Renaissance, René Descartes, Part 7, Innate Ideas. Professor Michael Botwin, Department of Psychology, California State University, Fresno. To René Descartes, innate ideas were the natural component of the mind. Now, what do we mean by innate ideas? Ideas that are already in the mind. Kind of Platonic, but remember, Descartes starting with developing his own system from scratch. So let's talk a little bit about innate ideas and what they were and where they came from in Descartes' model. Now, Descartes said some ideas are so clear and distinctive they had to be true even if we've never experienced them. So something can be true even though you have not had a personal experience with it. Now, Descartes noted one other thing. He noted these ideas were perfect, even though both he and I are not. So, where do these ideas come from? God put them into a person's head. So, according to Descartes, God is responsible for providing us with these innate ideas. Now, the innate ideas, you can see borrowing from Plato, and some of the innate ideas that Descartes talks about are things like unity, infinity, perfection, geometric axioms, you get the math coming back in again, and then finally God itself is an innate idea. So we have these innate ideas God provides us to understand the natural world. Now, we also get information from our senses. Let's talk about how René Descartes believed we received sensory information. First of all, he believed that sensory information needs to be clearly represented in consciousness before we can further process it and understand it. It must be distinct. What does he mean by distinct? First of all, you can't doubt the conscious experience. You have to understand that that experience is a valid sensory experience. And secondly, the sensory experience itself cannot be further divided into smaller components. Based on this logic, according to Descartes, sensory information then becomes a rational process, and we can trust our senses. Something Plato, remember, said you couldn't do. And as we previously discussed, Descartes says sensory information has to be analyzed to determine its validity. Now, how does that sensory information get to the brain? It flows through the nerves. So let's look at how Descartes looked at nerves. Now, he had an unusual idea about this. Descartes studied animals and humans, and one of the things that he was involved with was the dissection of dead bodies to understand how they worked. It's a good reductionist thing to do. He makes these conclusions about nerves. First of all, he believed that nerves were hollow tubes that were sense receptors that went to the brain. And these hollow tubes were filled with a liquid that he called animal spirits. Now, the animal spirits came in 4 flavors. So if you're hot-blooded or caloric, you have a really fast nervous system. Information processes really quickly because blood moves rapidly. If you're phlegmatic, well, your hollow tubes in your nerves are full of phlegm. Not the most nice substance in the world to talk about, but you can imagine phlegm moves far more slowly than blood. So phlegmatic people are hard to get going. They act slowly and deliberately. Now, this theory naturally was refuted. In fact, it was refuted during Descartes' lifetime. But it came out of the logic of the dissections he was doing. This is a little bit of gross anatomy for you. But when a body dies, the first part of the decay of a dead body is the nervous system. In fact, within 3 hours, your brain and nervous system goes totally to mush if it's not preserved in some way. So when Descartes was dissecting an animal, what he really was seeing was not the nerves as we know them today, but the nerves had already decayed and were this liquid gelatinous kind of thing that he deemed as animal spirits. Descartes is big on reflexes and reflexology. Here are a couple of extremely crude computer drawings from my early days of doing PowerPoints, and frankly, haven't got much better with my computer animation stuff. So let's look at how Descartes believed reflexes work. First of all, an external event stimulates a sense organ. Essentially, your nerves are tightened, opening pores in your brain. Animal spirits are released through those pores into the nerves, and they expand muscles. Now, what Descartes was doing was he was seeing that there were neural connections to motor neurons. And, well, this dates me, but the old Saturday Night Live guys had a sketch called Hans and Friends, and they always talked about pumping you up to give you a bad impression of that. And that's essentially what Descartes thought was going on. These animal spirits moved through the pores in the opening of your brain, pushed into the muscles, blew them up like balloons, expanded them, thus causing behavior. And that's how he believed reflexes work, through the stimulation of sense organs and then animal spirits flowing to the muscles. He believed both humans and animals acted in a reflexive manner to most stimuli. What Descartes found was that the physiological structure of humans and other animals was pretty much the same. And if you allow this, it lets you extrapolate on a few things, because now you can say that you can study non-humans to learn about human functioning. Since reflexive behavior is purely biological and mechanical, if you study the reflexes of a dog, you can understand the reflexes of a human. So bodily responses in Descartes' scheme are purely mechanical. We can learn new reflexes and hence learn new behaviors. So animals learn reflexively. They don't ponder with reason what they do. They just learn reflexively how to behave. And Descartes' ideas, as you can imagine, about the nervous system just are plain wrong. In fact, they were refuted way back during his lifetime as we started to discover how the nervous system works. Well, what are some other differences between humans and other animals according to Descartes? Descartes believed that humans possessed a mind, and the mind had three primary functions. First of all, it provided us with consciousness. Secondly, it gave us free choice. And third, it allowed for rational behavior. Animals did not possess minds. Now, the mind itself is non-physical, and it doesn't occupy any physical space at all. In fact, it's what the philosophers call non-material. And in Descartes' system, the mind and the soul are the same thing. So the mind's floating around in the ether, and it's causing the body at times to behave and to do things. So we have a reflexive body and a conscious mind that's immaterial. How do these two things work together? Well, that's Descartes' famous version of dualism, which we'll look at in our next video in the history of psychology. See you then. This has been a We Have Couches video production. Copyright 2020. Professor Michael Botwin. All rights reserved.